Every day, 34 people in their 20s and 30s are diagnosed with cancer.
On the 7th of July 2015, I was one of the 34.
On the 28th of August 2008, I was one of the 34.
But in Series 2, we're going younger.
We're teaming up with Teenage Cancer Trust to bring you 7 new storytellers.
As 7 13 to 24-year-olds are diagnosed every day.
So, Series 2 focuses on them.
These are the stories of what happens afterwards.
This is AfterThoughts.
The teenage years.
Hello, Alice.
Hi, Toby. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. We are into the recording sessions, aren't we?
We are like knee deep in recordings now.
Yeah. So really, I'm seeing you all the time. So when I ask you, I'm going to ask you how you are because it feels rude not to. But how are you?
Yeah, I'm good actually. I had quite an active day actually. So I went to a rebounding class today.
I have no idea what that means.
So it's basically aerobics on a mini trampoline.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And it was so hard. And also, I've genuinely never felt so uncoordinated in all my life. Like my limbs were going, like my arms were going in one direction, my legs were going in the other direction, and none of them were really doing what they were supposed to be doing, to be honest. But it was hilarious. So I'm not looking forward to getting up in the morning because I think my legs are going to hurt.
The reason why you've gone to that class, because it is a special class, wasn't it?
It was a special class, yes. So obviously with COVID, as we have talked about, charities have been really, really impacted by, funding's disappeared, events have disappeared, which has had a knock-on impact on fundraising. And to combat that, the gals at Copperfield, so the founders of Copperfield, Chris and Maren Helenga.
Is that Chris who was on Series 1?
It's Chris who was on Series 1.
Okay.
Oh, what a lovely
And
link.
can you get that episode?
Yeah, you can get that episode on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, all of the places.
Really
but yeah, Chris and Maren are bouncing for 12 hours at the weekend.
Wowzers.
How's your day been?
No, I've done no bouncing. That just sums it up. I've done no bouncing today.
Well,
and
more fool you, that's what I say.
Yeah, if anything, I feel bad. I can bounce this. But we've just recorded an episode with Jake today, haven't we?
We have. Brilliant Jake. Brilliant Northern Jake.
Yeah, so you were loving that and having 2 Northerners on the call. But let's what a great storyteller, some fantastic things. And I think one of the first times it's really hit me how important talking from the teenagers' perspective about things like hitting on education today was a big thing for me. We've heard about going back to work in Series 1 from Ryan, and actually this one really touched me about thinking about university and the impacts that it has on your career and thinking about your future.
Absolutely. And the thing that really struck me with that was this idea of the losses that young adults and teenagers have to go through when they are experiencing cancer, and it puts us on a different path from our peers, and I think that that's really important to explore. And I was really grateful for Jake's honesty and candor. I thought that was really important, and it'll really resonate. And I loved hearing him talk about that's kind of the wrong expression, but I thought it was great that he was so open with us about his memory loss as well. I thought that was really important and really powerful. It's something that a lot of us take for granted sometimes.
And what he was talking about, his mum, his mum just sounds so lovely. Oh my word. Yes, my mum was great and things, but his mum, oh my word. So I can't wait for people to hear this episode and dive into Jake telling you his stories.
Hello and welcome back to Afterthoughts. Toby, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Alice. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, and super excited to be joined by our next storyteller, Jake.
Were you waiting for having me? Were you? I don't know if you were waiting for me to you left such a great pause there, Alice. That was such a
building the momentum.
Yeah.
Jake, that's like, if you leave such a big pause, that's how much Alice is like really excited to have you on as a storyteller. The bigger the pause, the better.
Absolutely. That's what they say about bears, isn't it?
Is it?
I don't know.
Oh, Jake, where are you joining us from today?
Sunderland or Thailand.
Thank you for being with us here on the next episode of Afterthoughts, the teenage years. So we always start off Afterthoughts with some kind of quick-fire light questions, just so our listeners can get to know you. We always like to focus on the person before the cancer, and so we're going to dive in with some quick-fire questions for you, hard-hitting as they are.
They're not hard hitting. But first of all, what pronouns do you use, Jake?
He, him.
Who do people say that you look like, Jake?
I've got two.
Oh.
I wouldn't really agree with either of them. So watching Strictly Come Dancing last Saturday, and I don't know if it's because of my lack of hair at the moment, but my mum compared me to Max George from The Wanted, who's on Strictly.
Brilliant. Love
like,
that.
Like she was really chuffed with it. She's like, "You look like him." I was like, "I don't, but thank you." And I don't know if it's due to the weight I've lost of treatment or anything, but my my backside has vanished.
Oh,
Basically.
no.
Yeah.
My dad has compared me to Ramesh Ranganathan, the comedian, who they've joked about on A League their own before about him having nothing there either. So
That's hilarious. I
I've
love
been
that.
called Ramesh by my dad.
Great. And if you could be any toy, what toy would you be?
I could be a toy. Action Man.
Oh, good one. Yeah, I like that.
What is your favorite biscuit?
Favorite biscuit. M&S chocolate round.
If you had a teleporter, I'm going to ask that again. If you had a teleporter that could take you anywhere in the world, where would you like it to take you?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Somewhere sunny. Somewhere like Australia, New Zealand in the southern hemisphere where it's coming into summer, so
Lovely. Great
somewhere
shout.
warmer than here.
What's your go-to dish?
Go-to dish now.
Either you cook or that you would be like, I want something to cook this for me. Your go-to dish.
Go-to dish. I'm a sucker for a roast dinner, really.
Oh, yeah, of course you are. You're northern.
Follow-up question, sorry, with roast dinner. We're going, what's your favourite part of a roast dinner?
I don't know if this is more of a northern thing, but Yorkshire puddings.
Okay, I'll accept that. I would have also accepted roast potatoes.
One of my...
I like my dad's roast potatoes.
Oh, yeah. One of my least favourite things about living in London is I always have to ask for more gravy. They don't give you a lot of gravy as standard. You've got to ask for more.
Mm-hmm.
This is an important one. Cat or dog?
Dog.
Oh, quick answer.
Have you got a dog?
Did, unfortunately, but yeah. But dogs, just preference, big or small.
And Jake, could you give us a short summary of how old you are now, the cancer you had, and perhaps tell us what treatment you had?
Yeah. So I'm 20 now from July. So I had brain cancer of a rare tumour called medulloblastoma, which is at the back of the brain. That led to having 30 sessions of intensive radiotherapy, as they called it, the maximum they'd give for brain, like cancer and whatnot. And then in the new year 2020, I had started what was to be 4 cycles of chemotherapy. My last chemotherapy end of August, about bank holiday, around about that time, and then got the scan results back early to mid-September, and that was that for me in chemotherapy.
So our first story we are going to be focusing on afterthoughts, the teenage years, is beyond a diagnosis. We always get asked about that story, about what happened when you were diagnosed. And on afterthoughts, we were really interested to tell some of the stories that follow that moment. So Jake, I wondered if you could tell us a story of something beyond the diagnosis.
Yeah, certainly. So it would be on the Saturday I was told I had a brain tumour, confirmed following an MRI scan. That was due for a surgery to get that removed on the Monday. So if I jumped to the Monday, I remember like not fearing surgery because it was surgery to the brain. At the end of the day, I was always going to be terrified to have it. It was more just not really knowing what's going on around me. Just like, oh, I've got a brain tumor. What does this mean? Just a brain tumor? Is it cancerous? Am I going to die? Like, got asked that question. I did to myself and my mother, scare her. And yeah, I remember the day, early morning, they come in with you, like into your room, see you at your bedside with sheets to sign, consent and whatnot. Your parents, like my parents, just like really just stressed and worried, obviously, just like any parent should be. But getting brought down to theatre, like I'd met the surgeon, my neurosurgeon already, so he wasn't like a strange face, which helps. And then I remember sitting outside the theatre on the bed, you got your gown on and that, and it wasn't until that point, and they kind of opened the doors, like the doors to heaven almost, like it's time for surgery. And like I looked forward to me mum and dad and had to say goodbye, upsettingly enough, and it's awful, but that was when it finally hit me. It's like, I'm having brain surgery. I don't know if I'm going to wake up and be the same. I'm saying goodbye. They're saying goodbye. They don't know who they'll be saying hello to in a few hours. So, after the surgery, long surgery, supposed to be 3 hours, lasted a good 7 hours, I believe. Then afterwards, got brought to a recovery room. This is when stuff started to take a more of a comedic turn for me and my family. I woke up, I had the urge, probably because of where they'd been fiddling in my brain, to be sick. Got to a sick wall just in time. I think caught a bit of vomit on me, but not too much. There was damage limitation, I'd say. I can't remember what surgery this was, but there was a surgery. I had the same neurosurgeon again, and he says, right, you'll count to 30. By the time you get there, you'll be gone, and you'll wake up and like surgery be done. And I must have got to about 2. And then I woke up 6 hours later and just in recovery madness. So
it is kind of mad, isn't it? I remember some of my surgeries were optional, and I remember waking up after one and saying, I don't want to have the surgery, I don't want to do it. And they were like, it's too bloody late, mate. So we are moving on now to talk about those around us, which is the second of our segments. And we know that those around us play such a huge part in a cancer patient's experience. So, Jake, I'm going to hand over to you to hear your story about those around us.
yeah, so I'm sorry to my dad and sister first of all, but I'm only I'll pick one. I've got my mother here, right? So this goes back to me getting put in the hospital, getting moved to the hospital in Newcastle. The very first morning, getting left at about 3:30 in the morning, saying just have some rest, saying out my parents as well, because they were stressing, obviously, and they got sent home. They came back first thing in the morning, my mum and my dad, and they stayed with me like throughout every day they could in hospital, for the surgeries, the rainy days, the bright days. This moved on to my mum when my dad had to go back to work in December time, had my radiotherapy. My mum was there every day. It was just this expectancy of having my mum with me. It was something I got used to. So then come March time, when I had my chemotherapy, it was almost like a shock to the system with COVID restrictions. I can't have anyone on the wall with me. So I'd had a bit of chemo with my mum there. Granted, it was overnight stays, so it wasn't like she was sleeping there, which they actually offered that she could sleep there, but I thought, just go home to your comfy bed. You can have some sleep there, come back in the morning, refresh for us. But then it was such a shock to the system when she wasn't allowed there. Granted, luckily, towards the end of my chemotherapy, they started letting in like a visitor. It had to be the same visitor when you're staying on multiple days for about an hour a day, which that hour was like priceless. It was over quicker than a minute, it felt, but it was priceless, absolutely priceless having her there. And then moving on from like chemotherapy now, she's working from home and she's like my carer, so I get her every day still, luckily, and she's priceless. Honestly, just I couldn't like explain in words. I struggle to explain in words like what she does for me. She's great. She's everything.
So, Jake, our next section. Our next section of Afterthoughts is invisible impacts, and we're looking for stories that tell of those things that perhaps people won't notice through looking at young people who've had cancer, but an impact that it has had on you. So, Jake, I'm going to hand over to you for the invisible impacts section.
So my invisible impact I'll talk about will be my memory, but more specifically short-term memory. So this is like I've always claimed I have good memory, but this is probably worsened with chemotherapy. It's probably been damaged a bit with my surgeries and radiotherapy, but I only really started to notice it after I've had like periods of chemotherapy where just because of my surgery impacting my mobility, I'm not very practical. I'm just sitting around. I'm more of a talker now. So it'd be in conversations with anyone in my family, in a household, whatever. I could be talking to them about one thing, switch to another. When I have to switch back, I'd go completely blank, which isn't unlike me. It's quite uncharacteristic. So that was a bit of a shock for me, not having good memory, because I've always relied on my memory in situations, which is a shame, really. But like most of the times, it does come back when I can't remember it. It does usually find a way of crawling back. So I haven't had anything important slip out of reach just yet. And yeah, I need it.
Jake, that's great.
No, I was thinking because I can't remember the second bit at all.
But that's, I mean, do
Quite fittingly, yeah.
That's like part of short-term memory loss. The second part was about talking about when you have headaches and
yes, of course. This will probably be in any time in this year, 2020, when I'll blame on my chemotherapy, just my memory being gone, like and whatnot. Sometimes I'd be staring at a screen too hard. I don't know, and I get a bit of a headache. To anyone, this is probably just a general headache. To me, what it actually was just a general headache. But with it came the added stress of, oh no, is this a new tumour or is this a reoccurrence or a regrowth? And it was the panic that would set on me would just be immense. I remember after I had my first bit of chemotherapy one day in hospital by myself, I had a bad headache and I went, oh no, like this is not good. Because the pain and the headaches, like I'll give it an easy 10.2 out of 10. It was like excessively bad. So I had this really bad headache one day and I slept. Like I had a quick little nap in the afternoon, probably about an hour and a half. Woke up and the headache had gone, and it was good to like just wake up and like, oh, it's gone. Like usually when I was having this like pre-surgery and not having headaches pre-surgery, they would be there for hours upon end. So then having a headache which could just go quickly was just a great relief for me. And I've had a couple of light headaches since, and I'm not as stressed about them now, but there's always that anxiety that comes with it, definitely. But I think I'll always be there.
we're going to go now to the next section of Afterthoughts, the teenage years. It's a new one for this series, and we are asking our storytellers to share a story around this idea of teenage kicks. So the things that young adults or teenagers with cancer have experienced that their peers might not have done. So Jake, when you're ready.
Yeah, so just like a lot of people at the age of 18, that's when people start to go to university. I jumped at the chance of it as soon as I could. I'd left college with good grades, went to university to study sports journalism at Sunderland. Did my first year there, passed it, just. Put the emphasis on just there. And just had a great year all in all, had the whole university lifestyle, adapted to the way of university life of learning, people I met, the lecturers, everything. I loved university, I really did. And it was in that gap in between my first and second year where I felt bad. And unfortunately, that meant I had to go on a gap year. Not the kind of gap year you see people going on when they're going abroad for a year and they're having parties and that every day. I mean, that would have been ideal. My sort of party was fish and chips on Friday in the hospital. So that's a bit different to normal gap years. But that was my gap year, getting treated for brain cancer. And then come the end of chemotherapy, it was that decision time of, do I want to go back to university? Because it would be going back but doing my second year. But it was the thought of like having to be a year behind my mates who I'd gained great bond with and have continued to since, talk to them and whatnot, and meet up with this new group, have to remingle and whatnot, and just go through it all. And I feel like my motivations had changed. So it was for that decision that I had to actually drop out of university. I decided, obviously, you might see people drop out of university for many different reasons. I doubt many people are dropping out because of a health problem like I had. It was hard, but I was quite emotional about that. I'll be honest, because it was leaving a lot behind and it was a lot lost, maybe. And I just thought in the end it was the right decision. Like I said, my motivation going. So that was it with me, really, just dropping out and just being happy with the decision I made.
Wow, that's a really strong ending as well, the happiest decision you've ever made. Again, it's one of those really relatable stories.
Yeah.
Like for anybody who's either gone through uni and continued, but had to like, so I continued, but things were definitely different. Like I couldn't go and do lots of things. I remember having to watch. So because I went to drama school, oh no, that was in this because of the surgery. But I remember there was this capoeira class, which is Brazilian martial arts, right? And I'd had some surgery on my stomach, so I got told I had to just sit there and watch them. And I was like, after like their first like 2 sessions, I was like, do you mind if I just don't sit here and watch everybody now?
Yeah.
That is so depressing. Really, why did they make you watch?
Really depressing. Just watch them, it'll be fine. So on Afterthoughts, we always have a section called Lost Conversations. And Lost Conversations is to really highlight the fact that, yes, in the young cancer community, we are starting to have some important, brilliant conversations about things that are happening in the cancer community, but also with the wider public as well. But there is always a need to highlight some of the things that might be falling through the cracks. And so this is an opportunity to tell a story around the lost conversations. Jake, over to you.
Yeah, so I'd highlight mental health. And obviously mental health's a problem in every aspect of life. But if I make it more specific to my battle with cancer, you can think about anxiety. And I remember specifically towards the end of my first cycle of chemotherapy, I knew I was getting an MRI scan, which had huge ramifications for it. If it was good, no more chemotherapy. If it was bad, then let's keep fighting on. So that created what, happy to say I've learned the term scanxiety. So that was a very just uncertain time, because you go through different emotions and feelings of, is it going to be good? What happens if it's bad? What happens if it's good? And there was all those different thoughts that, like, someone who isn't going through the same wouldn't consider. It's like if you went up to someone and like said, "Have you had scanxiety before?" They'd look at you silly. Like, so almost the whole kind of like, because like scanxiety would create stories in itself of like episodes when I'm feeling really positive about the scan, or quite like nervous excitement almost, or times when I'm very pessimistic, like, oh no, this isn't going to go well. And I think having that focus on like mental health is something that a lot of people won't see, because it is mental at the end of the day. They won't see. It might be something like a story I keep personal to me. Like scanxiety isn't always like shown in your face. It's often kept inside your head and whatnot. So being anxious and whatnot about scans was an awful thing, basically, I'd say.
What about kind of what are your coping mechanisms for any kind of general anxiety or mental health struggles?
Occupying myself, whether that be watching something daft on TV, playing a game on my Xbox, or just occupying myself, getting your mind off certain things, just completely doing the opposite thing, like watching a comedy TV show or something, just getting lost in that. And then you end up having thoughts about that rather than getting lost in the stress of being anxious about anything. So just, I think reoccupying would be my main kind of thing I'd go to. Just get off topic, just go off road with it, just have different thoughts in your head, having thoughts.
We always like to end on this section, don't laugh. And the reason we end on it is because, you know, talking about cancer can be pretty heavy. And we really like to finish on a bit of a lighter note, because although cancer is difficult and comes with a lot of baggage, there is some funny parts. We've all got kind of little funny stories about our cancer experience. So Jake, we would love to hear your funny cancer story. Over to you.
Yeah, so this is finding some light in an awful lot of darkness, basically. I'd heard from people on the ward that they have a therapy dog who comes on, and I thought, great, this is what I need. Like, I've answered the question earlier, cats or dogs? Dogs. Therapy dog, great, this is going to be great for me. Can't wait. So one morning, I get this dog come in. First day on the job, first patient, me. So this was ideal, you know. I thought, who better than me, obviously. So this dog comes out. I can't remember its breed. I've got a name for it, which you'll find out later in the story. But yeah, so this dog came in, and I remember I had my parents in, and it was just great because I was a dog's person, and it was just stroking this dog and that, and it was so calm. And I felt like some sort of Bond villain or something with a cat, just the way stroking this little dog, and it was so relaxing and calm. And that leads to that night, me having, I don't know if I must have been on a bit too much morphine that day. I know I'd always try and get her more as soon as I could, but I don't know if I'd been on a bit too much painkillers that day. I remember waking up, or like thinking I'd woken up. It was probably a dream. I don't know, some sort of hallucination of the emergency alarm going off on the ward. And I'd heard like it almost like a defibrillator, like clear. And then hearing like a last like howl, like a dog howl, and then like a flat line, which got to the morning, and like told me mom in this like horror, because I got so attached to the dog in the like 5-10 minutes I got annoyed. But I heard this howl going, and it's died already, hasn't it? So like my mom and all this is like, right, I'll talk to the nurses, we'll get this sorted, don't worry. And this is the thing, like, am I going mad, or is it just me, like, just like, I don't know. So my mom asked, and the nurses said no dogs died. But my defense to that was they went in overnight. They've just came in. So she didn't get word off the nurses who were in. They could have just cleared the dog and that. And what happened with the hallucination, which kind of makes me lead towards it not being true, is they put the dead body in a chair in my room, like, as soon as it died. So I thought it a bit weird if it was true. And then that led to me describing the situation as the Specsavers advert, like, Karen, I've got a cat with no pulse here. Like, it was almost like that was the dog. Like, Karen got us here. Said it was the dog, which apparently was called Randall in this hallucination. So Randall the dog, rest in peace.
Oh my goodness. That is a great story. I love that one so much. And like, it just, how mental drugs make us is just confounding, isn't it? They do wild things to your brain. That was a great story. And
Did you ever
R.I.P.
see
Randall the dog?
Did you ever see Randall again, like the real life Randall? So we don't know for sure that Randall ever survived. If there were any listeners out there who know Randall, the hospital dog, please send us in a note just to let us know that Randall is alive.
Randall, the therapy dog. Was that when you were at the Freeman?
That was at the RVI in Newcastle.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so we're doing a call out here for Randall, maybe not called Randall, the therapy dog that goes in. I think this could be a big search that we could be doing. Like
we could put it on social, like #find Randall.
Find Randall. So we want to know where the therapy. Oh, but I just love that there were therapy dogs that came in. Like, God, I wish there were therapy dogs that came in to see me. That would be
same.
Oh, the joy, absolute joy. So that is the end of our episode of Afterthoughts. Thank you so much, Jake, for coming on and sharing your stories and telling us about Randall, because I think at the end of the day, that's going to start a movement.
It's honestly, Jake, it's been such a pleasure to have you on, especially as a fellow Northerner. And yeah, thank you for sharing your stories with us so openly and so generously. We really appreciate it. And you've been a brilliant storyteller.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. It's been a pleasure.
So that was Jake's episode of Afterthoughts. And again, what an absolute treasure. What a peach.
Oh,
no pun intended.
Did you actually not? Did you do that by mistake?
I did do that by mistake, but yeah, he was a peach. You're a peach. Yeah, it was fab. And yeah, thanks to Jake for being on, joining us.
And as we've mentioned in the podcast, we are on the hunt for Randall. Randall is who we're looking for. Find
Randall.
Find Randall. So Randall was the therapy dog in which hospital?
At the RVI in Newcastle.
Right, and that's what we're looking for. We don't know what type of dog Randall was.
We don't even know if Randall was his actual name.
No, not at all. But we're on the hunt.
Looking for him.
Alice, can you give us what's your afterthoughts on today's episode of Afterthoughts?
It's a really good question.
I mean, it's a question we ask at the end of every episode. So I
feel like I should have been more prepared for it than I am. My afterthoughts on today's episode of Afterthoughts is, why doesn't every hospital have a therapy dog? That's my afterthought. Therapy dogs, therapy cats, just therapy pets. Brilliant. Great idea. I love it. Toby, what about you? What are your afterthoughts on today's episode of Afterthoughts?
Oh, we said afterthoughts a few times, haven't we? Really getting that in the mouth. There we go. Yes. Do you know what? I was going to talk about like the after surgery story, and like both you and I have had some surgery in the past, and like that really kind of hit home with me a little bit. But I mean, I'm just really struck again. I've mentioned it about like this. He said about this was my gap year, and like I think that just really hit for me. Like like sometimes gap years involve a lot of lots of different drinking and lots of different traveling and poisons, and I think there's just a sense of going the different poisons that Jake was having on his gap year.
Do you remember that video that did the rounds a few years ago that was like yeah on my gap year yeah
exactly what.
Do you remember?
I do remember that one. Yeah.
Well, it just obviously Jake's experience was not like a gap year. Yeah. And on that note, I think let's say goodbye to our lovely listeners.
Thank you, listeners, and we'll speak to you soon.
Bye.
Speak to you soon? That's not a thing.
If today's episode of Afterthoughts has brought up any thoughts or feelings that you'd like to speak to somebody about, we really recommend grabbing a cuppa with a friend or dropping them a message on WhatsApp. There are also tons of charities out there who can help you if you've been through cancer and need a bit of extra psychological support. Thanks so much to Teenage Cancer Trust for supporting AfterThoughts, the teenage years, and supporting teens and young adults diagnosed with cancer in the UK. The work they do is incredible. Find out more at teenagecancertrust.org. AfterThoughts is produced by Alice May Purkiss and Toby Peach from Beyond Arts, with sound design by Kieran Lucas.